الدنيا زي السكر.
Good evening. This is part 2 of Why Women Lie, and we'll be looking at the impacts of the lies. And we touched on it on the first part of the episode, and how many agencies are involved, how much money it costs, what it does, the effects it has on the accused party, and so on and so forth. We still have Sally-Ann with us. Again, thank you very much. I think part 1 was really, really insightful to me, and I think you made profound statements, to say the least. I'll be picking your brains again to explore the impacts it has within our societies, with the hope, God willing, that women that are lying or think of lying in the foreseeable future think otherwise, because of the profound impacts it has. Just before we begin, I'd like to thank my main sponsor, Hyannis Estates. If you're a landlord in London, they cover the London area, and you want your properties on rent, they're reliable and trustworthy, reach out to them. Also, we have Simplex Coaching, who deal with family matters and coaching matters and child-parent matters. So if you're having any problems or anything that you want to discuss within the family courts, please reach out to them. Their website is on the frame behind me. Thank you very much. Now, Sally-Ann, without further ado, we want to tap into the impacts now. And let's start off with the children, because they're the precious in-betweens here that are most affected. And I want to start with single mothers that are hell-bent on ensuring that the fathers of their children have no access to them. So let's fast forward 5 or 10 years. These kids are, say at the time of the incident, 5 or 6 or even 7 or 8. And the woman has succeeded in persuading the court to pass judgment that the father can have either limited access to the children, and men are men at the end of the day. If essentially a man and woman do move on. So over a sustained period of 5 or 6 years, if this father has limited access to his children, maybe once a week, once a month, whatever it may be, and then gets married and starts a new life, technically those children are fatherless, unless that woman marries another man, and that man is a good man and takes care of her kids. So I want to first start off with a bang. What are the statistics on single mother households with regards to antisocial behaviour, drugs, so on and so on, delinquency?
So if you are a single mum and raising your children are more likely to use drugs, end up in prison, be homeless, drop out of education, experience child pregnancies. The list is endless. Experience mental health issues. Over 70% of those in prison grew up in single mother homes. So that shows you how much being a single mum and raising a child without their father. And I want to say they are father, and I don't want to diminish stepdads. I grew up with a stepdad. He was amazing. But when you try to replace a child's father, what you're doing is you're saying to them, your dad didn't want you. You're dropping their value of themselves, because the basic people in our lives who should want us are our mother and father. So bringing your children up in a single home, your children are more likely to experience things that are called now the adverse childhood experiences. Your children are more likely to die 10 years younger without having the love and the care for both parents. And
Can I just stop you there? Sorry. Likely to die 10 years younger.
Yeah. So conflict in a relationship, when you're not working on conflict in a relationship, the separation of your relationship will cause conflict. Otherwise you wouldn't separate. When you're not working on that separation and building a structure where you can co-parent, your children become damaged within that. Because women who push dads away, forget anybody else, you are damaging your children. You cannot lie to yourself. Do not lie to yourself, right? Because you are damaging your children. Children need their father, okay? They don't need... I grew up with a stepdad. Stepdads are... I don't want to set the relationship between a stepfather and a child that it's not meaningful and valuable. It absolutely is. The more people that love us, the better, okay? So that I'm not diminishing that, but not having your father in your life it strips your identity down. It strips your confidence. It strips your self-esteem. Okay. If you're bringing it up in a single parent home with mum, okay, there is something called ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. So the breakup and the conflict that you've experienced through mum and dad, dad's not on the scene as much as the children need him to be on the scene. So there's still conflict in that management. And then these children have got the gap of guidance from their father. Okay. Now, fathers bring resilience. Psychological research has showed, 10 years study in America and 10 years study here, shows that fathers bring children resilience. Without fathers in their life, children don't have the same resilience. So every time they're knocked down, they don't know how to get back up. That's what resilience is, okay? So all of this recipe that's going on, these children then experience what is called adverse childhood experiences. And the list, you can look them up online. It's very easy to understand what they are. It's called ACEs, okay? Have a look online at what this means. But the outcome of this research, which is a long-standing research in America by psychologists, what they found was people who experienced adverse childhood experience lived 10 years less than anybody else. So we've got a massive amount of impacts on children purely because two adults who chose to be together, and I know this is a bit brutal, you were adults when you got together, you chose to be together, you chose to have these children and to try to raise them yourself. Now you've got to put on, I know it's a bit of a crude term, but you have to put your big girl in your big boy pants, and you need to create a relationship where both of you can co-parent for those children. Because otherwise, this is the impact for them. The mental health issues, and the reason they drop out of school is because they don't believe they're going to succeed in anything. Because if my father didn't want me, if my father's not around in my life, I'm nothing. That's one of the biggest intakes for this. They drop out of school so quickly, they don't succeed. Too distracted. Sorry, I could go on forever with these statistics. I really could go on forever. But parental alienation is real. Women's services and lots of other services fought against with parental alienation. It's very real. We know it's real. Everybody knows it's real. If you've delivered services like I have for 30 years in and out of the courtroom, you'll see it there every single day. All the manipulation, the coercion to push dad out of their life. On the soft side, right, I think women don't know how to manage their husbands when they're not their husbands anymore. They don't know how to
Talk me through
deal.
that. That's very interesting.
So there's not enough help out there to support families. And I think men are men, okay? Most of you have a small percentage of alpha in you. You definitely have with your children. This is one for the dads. A 10-year study showed in America, which was done over a period of time with multiple partners. So same-sex mums and mums, dads and dads, foster parents, adoptive parents, blood parents. The study was done. What was found was women, and I could be shot for the same crime. When I had my children, I believed my body changed, my hormones changed, everything about me changed. There was some entitlement feeling that I carried this child. There's some entitlement to ownership for me. You know, I understand this child better than their father did. That's not true. As soon as a child is born, within 2 weeks of the child being born, the father's testosterone level drops, never to regain the same height that he's had before he was a father. This changes the structure of his brain. And the part of the brain that changes for him is the fight, flight or freeze, the protective side, okay? And it brings out the parenting and protection side of him. So when ladies, you're getting dad and he's texting you, what you've done is you've isolated him from something that's biologically changed in him to protect his children. His one drive through that biological change is to make sure his children are safe, happy, well. That's all he wants. That's all he wants to know. And he's biologically changed for that. So when you strip him away from that, it's like torture. It's like being tortured. One of my dads, his child was diagnosed with cancer, and shortly after he was stripped away from seeing him for over a year. Didn't know what was happening, didn't know how it was, nothing. Actually, I've got a couple of dads that happened to, freakily enough.
Well, so these children had cancer.
Yeah.
And these patients, are they clients rather?
Yeah.
Can I call them clients? So these fathers were not allowed to see their children?
No.
Purely because the woman
And make it a false allegation.
False.
Yeah.
And has that been substantiated that they were false allegations? Because
Yes.
at the time you wouldn't know, right?
Yes.
So these women have been so evil that they've...
But do you know, honestly, Ollie, I don't think these women know this. Do you know, I honestly don't think they know how much a man's body changes, how much his brain changes. They don't know what drives him. It's not widely known, you know, it's not widely published. And when you get a man who, in terms of his children, his alpha zone is alive, you know, he's ready for anything. He's switched on for anything. And then you strip that away. So the texts, the harassment, where's my children? I want to see my children. The chaos that he feels is a biological response. He just needs to know his children are safe. Guys, you need to rein that in a bit. I know how hard that is, right? But you do need to rein it in a bit. But I think that women don't know how to manage those husbands, and they don't know how to manage what's being coming towards them, this power, this passion. And then when they move on, and 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, they're looking at new husbands, for a woman to manage two men, it is extremely difficult. Some women it's not, right? If you know what to do and how to do it and how to separate it and sit down boundaries, get people to buy into those boundaries, it's okay. I have some very successful examples of co-parenting with a stepdad in place, where the two men get on very well because they've grown that relationship. They've worked on it for the sake of the children and the family. But mostly women don't know how to handle that. They really don't.
Why do they lie in the first place? I mean, that's a very crass question, but why do they lie?
They lie because they feel like, one, there are some extremely naughty women out there who really don't care. Don't care. They will tell themselves, oh, this is all to benefit the children. I'll get rid of dad. There's no more headache. He's gone. Right? And they will go to any lengths.
But he doesn't go, though, does he? He's like a incessant beaver, though. Where's my
Well,
kids?
that's why we get the police in, we get social services in, we get all these services doing what we need them to do. We end up getting stripped away from all of our community because we've been rehoused by women's services. We are completely isolated now. We have to carry this lie like a massive suitcase on our back every single day. And it doesn't go away. Because when you get married and you've got a second husband, if you've had children's services involved, you are still on that radar. Are you a woman who's capable of keeping your children secure when you've got married again? This lie becomes like holding the world on your shoulders.
A criminal record, rather.
Yeah. No criminal record for women.
No, what I mean is, if I have a criminal record, it will come up on a CRB. Wherever I go, whether it's a job. So this isn't a criminal record, but this lie will affect everything going forward.
So this is what this lie does for a woman.
Tell me.
Right? So a woman doesn't realise what this can do to her. She makes a claim that there's abuse, okay? I don't want to judge women because I know what it feels like to be scared, right? So if you're just somebody who never thought you'd ever divorce, and you've got all of your tribe around you and everybody's giving you advice, and you're it's like holding on to a rope for survival, right? If you're that woman, all right, and you're pushing down the road pathway where people are bombarding you and you're really scared and you're trying to manage your children on your own and you don't know what to do, and then you choose to make a lie. You say that your ex-husband has been coercive, controlling, has financially abused you, or has been aggressive and made you, whatever you decide that is going to be your untruth or your extended truth. Because when we break up, we do argue, and some of those arguments get a bit tough. But you've extended and you've told that lie. You go into your legal aid person and they fill in the form, and I've seen coaching. I don't care what any solicitor says to me. I've been present and stopped my staff working with solicitors' firms that we have known as coached women to say certain things.
So this is business merely for them?
This is business. And anybody dares challenge me on that, I will give them evidence. So when you go in the room, you disclose, they fill the forms in, you get your legal aid, you're given 25 grand is the normal amount of legal aid for a solicitor to take you through a court process.
How long is this court process usually?
Well, it's normally, depends on the complexity of what the lie is and the case. But I mean, it can be 12 months, not very often. It's normally 18 months to 2 years, the process is. Depending on your lie, the police or somebody will get involved. They have to. If Women's Aid get involved and it's a domestic abuse, they will say that police have got to, you have to take police action. So they will tell you you've got to report it to the police, and they will support you to
So your
report
hand's
it.
almost forced.
So your choice was to make the lie. Okay. After that, everybody else's choices come on the table.
Okay, so the storm.
Your one little thing becomes you managing a number of different agencies, a number of different opinions, and lots of people saying to you, you have to do this, you have to do this.
In order to get legal aid, in order to ultimately secure your children or withhold your children from seeing their father.
But a lot of women, they get on that roadway and they realise they've done wrong. They realise.
Is there any way to come back from that?
It's very difficult.
So if you've started a lie, it's too late.
It's very difficult. And the reason is because domestic abuse is a reportable issue to children's services. So once it becomes a reportable issue, you've got children's services coming in and they then tell you what you have to do. You've got women's services coming in telling you what you have to do. The police are involved because you've had to go to the police and you've had to report this. So now you've got 3 major services surrounding you, telling you what you have to do. And children's services will tell you, if you have anything to do with this partner, you risk losing your children.
This new partner or?
The partner you've left, the husband you left.
So they've made all of these allegations and they've been successful in warding the father off, the father of children off. Now they've gone into a new relationship, potentially a stepdad. You're saying at the time of that inception, where that has become material, whether it's marriage, all these services come into play here again.
So that potentially, we've got cases, too many cases that happens with. In our society, we have working class families, we have professional, we have families that are on benefits, and I guess it's a hard thing to say, but if you were in a family unit where you're claiming benefits, okay, I'm trying to be diplomatic. If your first relationship has ended with a lie, you've gone through the court process, police, children's services and women's services and education have been part of that, and you've been forced to be part of all of their voices through this lie. If you move on to a second relationship, that first relationship goes with you into the second relationship. So once social services have concerns that you can parent your children and protect them, that concern stays with you.
Bit like a criminal record.
It does. I mean, and I'm not saying that's, in some cases, that's right, it happens. Some ladies don't have what it takes to protect their children. They don't have the capabilities and they seek services. But even for women who generally would have the ability to bring up their children, they are then they're on that pathway. So it only takes one thing to sway that back over for those services to get involved again. And what is interesting, statistics show us, if you've got children's services involved with you and your children are more likely to have children's services involved with their children. So there's a pattern here. And we can't help what happens to us when we are victims of domestic abuse, right? When we're in that situation. People who've grown up in certain experiences in their life, it's a struggle. They are traumatized, they are struggling with additional layers, okay? We can't help that. But when you put yourself on that pathway because you've chosen to lie, you have no idea of what that will do to you, probably for the next 2 to 5 years, or until your children are adults. So you've signed yourself up to a rhythm in life that will control you for the rest of the time your children are adults. And when your children find out that you have actively stripped their father away from them, because at some point they have the possibility of doing that. Children, when they become 18, can apply for their court papers. Okay? Relationships between fathers and children start to reconnect when they become 18. When children find out, I've got children that are now adult children who come to us for lots of different reasons. But we've got adult children who now don't have anything to do with their mother because of this. So one lie can take you on a pathway that completely catapults your life into complete chaos. You think you're making the decisions on parenting your children. That quickly changes, because you're quickly in a room, in an environment where all of these people are saying to you, if you go near him or if he goes near your children, then you may risk losing your children. You risk your children going into care, because if you don't hold him away from this situation, everybody else comes in and makes those decisions for a lie, for one lie, where there are other ways to do this. And that's what you have to do, because you have to find a way where you can arbitrate, where you can create boundaries between you both so you can co-parent at an acceptable level. There's no other option.
I'm going to be, thank you, that was beautifully explained. Thank you, and that was really good actually, and I think you touched on points that I'm planning to cover. Okay. For instance, that when children become adults or young adults, they tend to go to their fathers, and I feel sorry for the mothers then, because you've brought this kid up for all this time for that kid to then run away to their father, particularly in instances where you've created a rod for your own back. Yeah. That adage, you've lied and you've neglected that child or these children from seeing their father, and they've got to an age where they can make their own decisions and they decide to leave you. And you can quite easily point the finger and say, shame on you, you shouldn't have lied, you shouldn't have done this. But also, by that point, the damage is done. The children are done.
Trust.
Yeah, it breaks trust.
It breaks trust.
And these children that are growing up and having to have lived through that ordeal, because these are I say silent majority, these are the silent victims here.
Yeah, I know.
These children that have to go to court or have to go to what they called family centres to see their fathers. Not to mention, notwithstanding the financial burden or avalanche rather that the father has to endure in order to see his children, albeit once a week or once a month or 3 times a month. I do think that, again, to my point, that I do feel sorry for these women that, start their journey on a lie because of whether it's the opinions that they received from their aunts or their sisters or their friends or whatever family supports, and also the lure of the agencies that are out there available to them, whether it's financial support, accommodation, and really it might be that they just want to get away from this husband of theirs, who may not be an animal, which they just merely don't like anymore. Yeah, I know. But they've just gone to extremes because of the heightened sense of security and extremities, emotional securities. So there's a lot of things, and I'm not trying to provide solutions here, but I do want to ask you this. So you and I as Muslims, we will, God willing, try to live within the purview of Islam and adhere to the guidelines of Islam as much as possible throughout our lives, right? And that applies to within marriage as well. So I recollect saying in the last episode that most of us, 98% of us, there's 2% maybe, I'm not sure what the statistics are, not making it up, just generalizing here, that will probably live modern Western lives. They're Muslim by name, but they do follow the letter of the law. And I'm not judging them, that's up to you, right? It's a free country. But the 95 or 98% that do follow Islamic guidance to govern, or as a governance, to deal with marital matters and the gender roles within those marital matters. And I think I mentioned one last episode that it's the man's duty to provide financially and protect the children and the wife. And women, this is their right, happily take that on board up until things become acrimonious, and then they disregard the Islamic side of things and then go on to civil law and all the other agencies that I've just reiterated. I want your advice, or sort of to the audience and myself. Shall we not just stick to that instead of at first port of call? I understand these avenues are there to go to court, family court, to use all these agencies, and they should be used as and when needed. If you're physically being abused, use it. I'm not trying to be patronizing here now, I'm repeating myself here. But surely, in instances where, as a Muslim man and as a Muslim woman, where things aren't working out and there hasn't been anything heinous done, so rape hasn't taken place, physical abuse hasn't taken place, it's merely you don't get on with each other. I may have lost attraction for you, I can't stand the sight of you anymore, or merely I'm just bored. I'm bored of this marriage. As simple as that sounds, that happens. People get bored in life. surely can we not just, the Islamic guidance that we have governed ourselves under up until this point, why can't we stick to the things that we've trusted and allowed us to govern all this time? Why is it that we just put it in the bin and go to the civil courts? Why can't we go back to those Islamic principles and jurisprudence to govern our matters here as well?
So with the Muslim men that I support and
Sure.
the Muslim women I support, what they say to me, I mean, my one thing to say to Muslims is know your Islam. Okay, know what is your right. Understand what is in Islam for you, because culture does skew some understanding of Islam. So I would say know your Islam. All right, know who you are as a Muslim, and then because there's guidance there that you should be able to say this is how we're going to follow it. One of the things that Muslim men and women are saying to me, though, is when the Western culture offers services and solutions, but there is no service or solution within mosques, that a lot of the time that's how that transfer happens. And so we would be irresponsible to say that when there's all this green grass there, lots of support, lots of the systems in the UK that we're living by, it's all offering us, and there's nothing offering us within the mosques, then it's a challenge.
So you're saying it's not out of choice, it's the lack of services within the Islamic guidance.
This is what I'm telling. This is what
Sure.
This is what I'm being told.
Right.
Right. I am being told that when people are trying to seek advice and help, that there's nothing available to them within their faith places of worship. I know that there are lots of people who are trying to make that different. Okay, there are lots of people, but it's not easy. It seems to me that it's not easy. The feminist movement has moved into the mosque, okay? In my experience, it's moved into that environment.
The feminist movement has moved. Please elaborate. What does that even mean? What does that mean?
So when you've got Muslim men who are positioned, if you've got our leaders, for example, in our different cultures, you've got our leaders and they are sat there trying to offer guidance and teachings, and we've got the women equivalent to that in the mosque teaching and learning. All of that is there, right? It's waiting for anybody. But this feminist movement and narrative is coming into the mosque environment, and it's hitting our leaders, and they really
You're just being
don't know.
polite.
I'm being
Okay,
polite. They don't
right.
know what to do about it. They don't know how to deal with this.
Or are they just benefiting for themselves?
Well,
Because there have been alluding remarks in the past in many of my episodes about some people that hold a platform of influence that are under the feminist kosh.
well, the only way I can describe feminism, and I don't care who you are, and I'm sure you're going to get lots of people talking about this. I don't care who you are. I could stand in a room of 3,000 feminists and I could show them the evidence that what they believe in, that they are victims, is not true. The moving into the mosque environment, when the domestic abuse bill was created, one of the things that Women's Service pushed forward was women who come as not able to have recourse to funds. So the Muslim community became a target, okay, for women's services. And it became a target where, you're a woman who's come, you've got married, you're going through the process of visa, you don't have any funds, and therefore you can't access any help if you're experiencing domestic abuse. We know now, factually, we know that women are coming here, getting married, and then they're claiming domestic abuse as soon as they land. Because
You're talking about international brides here.
Because international brides are protected under the domestic abuse legislation. So, but when the domestic abuse happened, the bill was formulated, Women's Services identified this. which meant that Muslim women, because the way Muslim families marry and the cultural decisions for marriage and things like that, became a target. So leadership within the mosques have now been, positioned, and are probably covertly fighting feminism, because services are demanding that they take account for women who are stuck in relationships of domestic abuse, that we're oppressed, suppressed, insult to most Muslim women, So they've moved into that. So that feminist narrative has moved into the mosques. But the mosques, in fairness, and forgive me, leaders of mosques and imams and sheikhs, I think you're amazing individuals, and I genuinely, wallahi, feel blessed by the work you do, but you genuinely need to take account for this. The reason that families are seeking support from a westernized culture that doesn't understand them and doesn't know that we have everything we need in Islam is because you're not doing anything about it. You are letting families down. It's as simple as that. You're letting men down and you're letting women down, and you're allowing this to happen. And you need to be held accountable. And I know that's really strong. I know it's daring, and I know it's strong.
You're very bold.
Well,
Truth
truth.
is
Well,
truth.
the reason I am Muslim is because I believe in truth. And as gentle, and I genuinely appreciate the work that our mosques do. I've seen people work 18 hours feeding people. The volunteers are incredible, but there is a massive gap, and because of that massive gap, you have got this happening.
And then some are falling through the net and exploiting it.
Absolutely.
What was it? So out of, and again, this is another provocative question.
Okay.
Feel free to say you don't want to answer
No,
it.
truth is my best friend.
Okay, sure. So out of those couples that do choose to go into family court to separate, and it's usually the contention is the children, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many of them lie?
Well, if you want to believe the stats, 45%.
So a little less than half.
So 97.6%, 97.6% of cases that have domestic abuse attached to them drop off with no charge. So you've got 2.4%, 97.6%. These are recent stats.
So 97.6%, and you mentioned it in the first episode,
Yeah.
of those that allege domestic abuse lie. And how many do?
It's hard to find out whether they're lying, right? And the reason is because, so if we just backtrack it, 45% of cases going through family court have a domestic abuse allegation attached to them.
So it is less than half.
So a little less than half. 97.6% of allegations don't result in a criminal court,
Prosecution.
Yeah, they just don't. We don't know how many percentage of that are false and how many are real. But the reason why they don't end up with a court is because they are deemed to have not enough evidence. They will have been investigated because female services demand that they investigated. So they will have been investigated. Children's Services would have investigated them. They would have had CAFCAS officers involved. They would have been, the schools would have been contacted. Any agency wrapped around that children, GPs are contacted. Anybody that is in that family's life is contacted to look at behaviours, any issues, risk management. But 97.6% of them don't end up in criminal action. So we don't know how many, but somebody wrote a report and said 10% of them are false. I challenge that.
What would your assertion be, your hypothesis?
I would say at least 40 to 50% are false allegations.
Of the 96% of that cohort that do allege, half of them are lying through their teeth.
Yeah. I would say at
One
least.
too many. Firstly, I think we mentioned in the first episode, it dilutes those victims that are actually being
Absolutely.
oppressed.
100%. And those who don't have, if the police have got to investigate 45% of the family court, if they've got to investigate those cases, what energy are they putting into the real ones? I know it's impossible for us to unpick everything. I am driven by truth, okay? And I am driven by stats and evidence. Nothing I say I can't evidence. I won't let myself. I surmise 40 to 50% because if you look at the Ministry of Justice and you look at the way they get their stats, they investigate whatever, you know, I would, it's easy for me to say 40
You've got
to 50%.
30 years of experience.
I have.
Quickly,
yeah.
I'm opening up a Pandora's box here. You've brought in another group of people, the international brides, and I
Yes.
did an episode on this as well.
Okay.
And that was on a different matter altogether.
Okay.
But essentially, and this is me just thinking out loud, those foreign women brides that do come to this country with malign intentions purely for the passport. I mean, I don't blame it. If a guy from this country is going there to exploit them, they're equally exploiting you back. So if these women that actually don't fancy the man and use him as a red passport or a navy blue passport now, they come into this country and they're added to that mix where they come to this country now and they say, oh, he's domestically abused me, and they become a special case vulnerable victim. Surely they'd use it as well. And I can see the incentive for them to use it because they don't want to be with this man. And if you don't want to be with someone, you certainly don't want to sleep with them or share your bed with them.
I mean, guys who are living here are often, they're advised by their family. You know the way that Muslim marriages come. They're advised, families have the idea of who they want their children to marry.
No, I think, I don't know, I anti-bash men here. The men that do go abroad with the sole intention to find a pretty woman, specifically a pretty woman, prior to, so if for argument's sake, let's use Morocco for example, right? Morocco is a point of contention, right? Now, if me as a British man am going to Morocco with the sole intention to find a pretty woman, so I've got a checklist here. Bear in mind, I've never met this woman. I don't know who this woman is as of yet, but I'm going with the sole intention to find a pretty woman to marry. So there's no, relationship here. There's no chemistry here. There's no alignment here. Do we work? Then obviously I'm going there as a business transaction. And equally, the person that you find is looking at you as a business transaction. What happened to the good old days where you just, international romance and you happen to be in business on a holiday and you meet someone and there's fireworks? That's completely different, right? But when you go with the sole purpose because you might be, what's the colloquial term? You're a minger here, a half decent woman will look at you, but all of a sudden, because you've got a British passport, you're looking at, excuse me for using the Likert scale, 8 out of 10s. Have you heard of that term?
Yes.
8, 9 out of 10s. Beautiful women
Yes.
abroad that wouldn't look at you otherwise in this country, but you fancy your chances abroad. Obviously, you're going to get ripped off, and obviously, they're going to see you as money. What do you expect? Sorry, I just had a little bit of a.
But you're right, and in that circumstances, you'd say you reap what you sow.
Absolutely.
You reap what you sow.
But that cohort of people, the international brides, will obviously come because they've got their consiglieres and they've got their minions advising them internationally, because as soon as they come to this country and they've got their residency, they're probably taking their family out of poverty. I'm ambivalent on this matter, but I can see why they do what they do.
No, I know.
But they're going to be exploiting it as well.
Well, as soon as they come here, a large proportion of them then say that they've experienced domestic abuse. So the domestic abuse bill and the push for women's services has actually created a cohort of service users who know what to do when they come here. They know how to do it. They know who to speak to.
To bide their time, because a lot of these things aren't substantiated. They just have to utter it.
Yeah, you just have to say it. That's all you have to do. I think the one thing that this world needs to do, and it's not just here in the UK, this is present in Australia, Canada, America, some of the European states. I looked worldwide, okay? So what we need to do is we need to have accountability. So for the woman who puts a false allegation there, instigates a group of investigations by multiple agencies, which then determines that wasn't true, there needs to be accountability. Because that woman is breaking families, they're breaking children, they're breaking men. They're costing us £18 billion a year.
Staggering.
It's crazy. I don't know anybody else has put that figure together. I did it about 5 years ago and I updated it recently. And it's £18 billion per year.
That's what it's costing.
Yeah.
Is that sort of within this country or worldwide?
No, this is within this country. In the UK, it's
It costs £18 billion a year
£18 billion
to investigate.
every year to investigate one single false allegation.
One single false
One
allegation.
single false allegation.
You need to show me that statistic actually and how
I'll
you work that out.
send them all to you.
Yeah,
I'll
please.
send them all to you.
18 billion will be
Yeah.
bankrupt.
Yeah.
But I get the essence of this is with 11 agencies thoroughly investigating with due diligence requires a lot of manpower.
It's the reporting mechanism, psychological reports for the whole family. 3 of them, 4 of them, for the children and for mum and dad, if it's brought into the courtroom. Education has to do a report, £3,000 to £5,000, you know. Health GP has to do a report. Police investigation.
18 billion.
Yeah, police investigation, one investigation on average £25,000 to £50,000, depending on the severity of the accusation.
So I mean, again, this is me being obtuse here. Who pays this then? I mean, the taxpayer's not going to, again, this is me being extremely obtuse. I would believe if you said, and again, I will look at the statistics afterwards. I will believe if you said that 18 billion was to encompass every case and that's how much it costs.
No. It was based on the 45% of the allegations of domestic abuse that go in the courtroom.
Okay, so 45. So it's still so it's not one case. It's the 45%.
It's the 45%.
Right. So I've misunderstood then.
Yeah.
So it's not one case, but it's
one false allegation.
from
You have 45% of cases that go into family court
Right.
have an allegation of domestic abuse. Okay.
Right.
45%. So
Right.
I took the global figure per year of how many families go through a family court setting. I took 45% of those.
Right.
I've made some assumptions to drop that percentage. The some were false allegations and some weren't. And then I calculated what it costs the police, health, education, social services, legal aid. And that's not factoring in how much a father will pay for his legal costs.
That's true.
And some of them is 120, 130, 150,000 pounds just to go through court.
Yeah, I've heard crazy amounts
it's
depending on
crazy.
the profession.
Yeah.
Doctors paying, businessmen paying above the odds.
Yeah. So,
Thank you very much, Sally.
That's all right. I will share them with you.
Yeah, please do. Yeah. So I misunderstood. I thought it was just one case, but it's the cohort of cases.
The cohort of cases that go through cost us 18 billion.
That makes a lot more sense.
Okay.
Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've. We've got a professional here. Thank you very much. And she's come laden with statistics, and hopefully everyone out there, not for those that just do lie or exploit the system. This is for everyone. This could be you. I mean, I'm not trying to sound pessimistic here, but there may be a point in time where you are not getting on with your husband or wife, and you may be in this predicament. And my advice, and I think everyone's advice would be, act of integrity, act of decency and accountability. And as Sally Ann candidly and patently pointed out, if you do lie through your teeth to harm the husband or, damage him or whatever, hurt him because you're scorned, 5 years down the line when you're with someone else, you've got all these intrusive services doing their jobs that can potentially take your children away. Not to mention when they get to a certain age, and as Sally Ann said, statistically, they leave you, and that must hurt as well. But essentially, both part 1 and part 2 of this, we've endeavoured to understand why women lie. And I think I personally have learnt a lot about the drivers behind lying, and we've also looked at the ramifications, the financial costs. But ultimately, these episodes were done to prevent this from happening. It's all good and well being informative, I understand this, but prevent it from happening. So thank you very much for tuning in. We'll be back next time. See you then. Bye-bye.